Welcome to Keto Meals and Recipes.com. After several of my viewers have told me how much they really love my sugar-free sweetened condensed milk or my dairy-free sweetened condensed milk, and how they're looking forward to some recipes they had previously been unable to make, of the requests, the most popular was if I could post a Leches cake. So after a bit of keto chemistry, I'm really pleased to be able to share a recipe that I'm really proud of. A Leches cake that is sugar-free, gluten-free, and of course, keto. And as a bonus, and to incentivize you to watch to the end, I have a special bonus recipe that I'm not going to tell you unless you watch the video. As far as the Leches cake goes, I know it has quite a few steps, but it's really not a difficult cake to put together. In order to make sure that you succeed and make this cake perfectly, I have compartmentalized all the steps. I did that both in the written recipe and for this video tutorial. So just take it step by step and follow along. Making a cake is really just like chemistry. The important thing is to get the measurements right and then to follow the directions properly. And for those of you who've never had a Leches cake, let me tell you about it. This cake is a very moist, light sponge cake that has absorbed the amazing flavor of the 3 milk bath, and then it's topped with the delicious chantilly mascarpone cream. For this Leches cake, the macronutrient ratio is 5.5 to 1, with 8.9 grams of total carbs, 2.3 grams of soluble fiber, 1.9 gram of insoluble fiber, resulting in 4.7 grams of net carbs per very generous serving. Now, before beginning the recipe, assemble all of your ingredients. And now for step 1, which is to preheat the oven to 175 degrees Celsius or 350 Fahrenheit. And also line your 20 by 20 centimeter or 8 by 8 inch pan with parchment paper. Here's an easy way to cut the parchment so it will line the pan properly. Get a piece of parchment that will be the same length and width as the pan you will be using, just like this, and place the parchment sheet on the outside of the pan bottom. Cut a line towards each of the corners and just a little past the corner. Then just fold and crease the corners as I'm doing here, and then fit into the pan. Before putting my parchment into the pan, I like to grease the pan because that helps the parchment stick and makes for nicer edges. And then fit your parchment into the pan. And after lining your cake pan, set the pan aside until needed. And one last prep step I like to do is prepare my half and half cream. To a measuring cup, I add the water and then the cream and stir, and set that aside until needed. Step 2 is to start the cake. And the first thing you do is separate the room temperature yolks and egg whites into 2 separate bowls. And when you're separating them, make sure that you don't get any yolks into the egg whites, because even just a bit of yolk will contaminate and you won't get your egg frothing properly. I will be using my stand mixer to first whip the whites. To the bowl with the egg whites, add the lemon juice and whisk at high speed until light and frothy and there's no liquid egg whites visible. Gradually add 1 tablespoon of powdered sweetener at a time. Make sure you whisk to combine before adding your next tablespoon of sweetener. By the way, I also refer to powdered sweetener as confectionery sweetener. Then just keep adding 1 tablespoon at a time until all of your sweetener has been added and is whipped into the egg whites. You will notice that the egg whites are becoming stiffer and have a nice glossy smooth look. At this point, continue whipping for a couple minutes until the stiff peak stage. You can test to see if your egg whites are stiff enough by taking a scoop with a spoon, then turning the spoon upside down, and if the egg whites stick, they're perfect. That's exactly what you want. And then just set the egg whites aside for a moment. Now, to the bowl with the egg yolks, add the other batch of confectionery sweetener and whisk until the yolks are a pale yellow and frothy, and you notice that the volume has increased a bit. At this point, add the vanilla and the half and half cream you prepared earlier, and just whisk together into a smooth, runny consistency. Now it's time to add all the dry ingredients to the egg yolk mixture. Begin by placing a mesh sieve over your bowl and add the almond flour, the coconut flour, your confectionery sweetener, salt, baking powder, and glucosamine. Use your hand whisk to pass the dry ingredients through the sieve. Doing this step helps to aerate, especially the almond and coconut flour, and blend all the ingredients more evenly. I think aerating is always a good idea when you're baking cakes or making any other baked goods, because it helps to break up clumps and it makes the batter a nicer consistency. After you've added all the dry ingredients, just stir or whisk everything together into a nice batter. And to finish this batter, use about 1/3 of the egg whites and fold into the yolk batter mixture. You should whisk the egg whites very vigorously because this will loosen the yolk batter and make it much easier to fold the rest of the egg whites into it. Then just add the remaining egg whites into the yolk batter, but this time very gently fold until the egg whites are well incorporated. I think using a metal spoon is better for this step than a spatula or wooden spoon. That's because the metal spoon is much thinner and will not deflate the egg whites. All you need to do is combine until the egg whites are no longer visible, but don't over combine the mixture because you'll completely deflate the egg whites. And now it's time to pour your batter into a parchment lined baking sheet. Once the batter's in the pan, run a knife or skewer through the batter to remove any large bubbles, and also gently drop the pan onto the surface of your counter. Do this a couple times. Now place the pan into the middle position of your preheated oven and bake for about 25 to 30 minutes. And when your timer goes off, before taking it out of the oven, and if the cake is done, remove the pan from the oven and let the cake cool in the pan. And if you can, leave the pan in the oven with the oven door just slightly ajar for about 20 minutes so the cake can cool nice and slowly, and then your cake won't deflate. Then flip the cake from the pan onto a fresh sheet of parchment paper using your cooling rack. And just leave the cake out to cool completely. I'd like you to note that almond flour and coconut flour does not have gluten, which is what binds cakes. So gluten-free cakes like this sponge will be more crumbly until they've had time to cool. Now that your cake is at room temperature, if you want, trim the sides of the cake to make perfect, clean, and even edges. This step is not necessary. You can leave the edges intact. But if you're making this cake for a special occasion, the trimmed cake just looks and presents more beautifully. And the great thing is, you can have a wee taste of your delicious cake before you serve it to anyone else. That's what the edges are for. One of the perks of being the baker. Now for step 3, which I actually do while the cake is cooling. I make the 3 milk bath, or the Leches. In a large measuring cup or small mixing bowl, combine the heavy whipping cream, your sugar-free sweetened condensed milk, and you can use either store-bought evaporated milk. I actually don't use store-bought evaporated milk because there's so many ingredients that I don't think are actually good for me or are needed. And you can also substitute with one of either some more half and half cream mixture or almond milk. In this recipe, I've actually opted for the unsweetened almond milk. And whisk your 3 ingredients vigorously and set this bowl aside. When you notice that your cake is properly cooled, place the cake with the parchment liner into a larger cake pan. Using parchment in this manner is recommended because it makes it much easier to take the cake out of the pan before finishing. When you've placed your parchment and cake into the pan, poke the surface of the cake with a fork or a skewer, but don't be timid. Make lots and lots of holes. You want the milk to be able to penetrate the cake really well. Then pour the Leches or 3 milk mixture all over the cake, pouring mostly in the center of the cake. The last part of this step is to let the cake rest so that the milk can be absorbed. The best thing is to place the cake in the refrigerator and refrigerate for a minimum of 1 hour. I'd like to mention that how long you refrigerate will affect the texture and flavor of this cake. However, I really strongly recommend that if you can plan ahead and make this a day or 2 ahead, like so many keto high-fat recipes, the finished product tastes so much better if left overnight or even a second day in the fridge. That's because it gives more time for the fat-soluble ingredients to absorb all the flavors and for the full rich flavor to develop. This makes this a wonderful prep-ahead cake that you can make several days before your party or special occasion or whenever you want to serve it. And now for the 4th and final step, which is to make the cream frosting and then to frost the cake. I would make the frosting about an hour before I'm ready to serve the cake. To make the whipped cream frosting, just add your heavy whipping cream and powdered confectionery sweetener into a mixing bowl. By the way, my sweetener of choice is usually my monk fruit erythritol blend, which I ground to a fine powder. Whip your heavy cream to medium stiffness stage before adding anything else. And then just add your vanilla and whisk to combine. You can stop at this point. This is called a chantilly cream, and it's really tasty. Or as an optional step, if you want a stiffer, more stable cream frosting, then add the room temperature mascarpone cheese to the bowl. I also did the same frosting for my lemon sponge cake. You should check out that recipe, it's really good. If you're wondering if you can substitute with cream cheese, I would not recommend it. I find that the mascarpone creates a lighter and fluffier cream frosting and doesn't taste as strong as cream cheese. And for this Tres Leches cake, I think the mascarpone or nothing at all is the way to go. After adding the mascarpone, just whip gently until everything is well combined. But do not overwhip because your cream may curdle. And to finish the cake, just place dollops of whipped cream on top, and with your offset spatula, just glide it over the top and even out the surface. And try to make it as smooth as you can. If you're finding that you're not getting a nice smooth surface, it may help you if you dip your spatula in cold water and use a slightly moist cold spatula and then glide it gently over the surface. And then use your spatula and glide it all the way around the perimeter of the cake to make the edge of the icing really nice and crisp. It's also a good idea after you've added the frosting to refrigerate your cake for 1 more hour. This will allow the frosting to set and to firm up a bit. Then when you're ready to serve, cut the cake into 3 even sections lengthwise. And then rotate 90 degrees. And then also cut 3 perpendicular even sections. This will create the 9 squares. As a final step, I like to garnish my Tres Leches cake with strawberries or raspberries or blueberries or all 3 or whatever I have on hand. Today I've decided to use raspberries and a mint leaf. But I also like to serve it with 1 whole strawberry on each piece. Or alternatively, you can take the strawberry and beginning at the pointy tip, make 5 cuts towards the stem. Then fan these 5 cuts before placing it on each square. I've been told that traditionally in Mexico they often garnish with fresh cherries, but because I don't have cherries at this time of year, and because cherries are high in fructose, I won't be using them. This cake is so beautiful. I wish you were here and you could smell the amazing, clean, light smell, and it smells amazing. And everyone in my family just loves this cake because it's moist and has a luxurious mouthfeel. Even if you're a beginner, I hope you follow my steps and make this cake. I think after making it once, it will become a favorite. So I hope you enjoy it. Now for my bonus recipe. I made a little bit too much chantilly mascarpone cream. So what to do? Make another dessert, of course. And here it is. So I took a dessert glass, add about half a cup of this chantilly mascarpone cream, and then take whatever fruit you like. And here I'm indulging and putting in my strawberries, raspberries, and blueberries. And for a little something special, and just because I like chocolate, I'm sprinkling on a bit of shaved chocolate on top. If you do make extra whipping cream, or you feel you don't want to add as much, just place the whipping cream into an airtight container. It will keep really nicely for 2 to 3 days in the fridge. I hope you will like both of these recipes. If you're new to my channel and you like this recipe or my other recipes, please consider subscribing. Everyone, please, it's very important that you turn on your notification bell and scroll down to notify all. By the way, the link for the printable Tres Leches recipes and the sugar-free sweetened condensed milk and dairy-free sweetened condensed milk videos will be posted in the description below. I really appreciate everyone who takes the time to watch my videos to the end. That's the best kind of support you can do because YouTube promotes the videos with the greatest watch time. And if you're so inclined and would like, if you can, please support the channel with a donation to either my Ko-fi or PayPal accounts. The links are below. I also want to thank everyone who has already made a donation to my account.